So today we're going to be making homemade chicken and dumplings. I'm going to teach you to do these from scratch. This is one of those meals that I feel like it's worth the effort to do it from scratch. But you can also make chicken and dumplings with rotisserie chicken or leftover turkey. So if you're planning to make chicken and dumplings like that, I'm going to be talking about that as I go. I'll leave a little timestamp here, and you can skip ahead in the video if you're going to make it that way. But I'm going to show you the real way from scratch. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get a big pot, and into this pot we have 7 cups of water. We're going to put this on high. And to this water, we're going to add a teaspoon of salt. We want this water to be salted. And don't go overboard on the salt, because we're going to be using this water as your stock for your chicken and dumplings too. So you don't want to oversalt it. So 1 teaspoon of salt. And we're going to bring that to a boil. Now once this comes to a boil, we're going to be adding our chicken thighs. Let's talk about the chicken for just a second. This particular dish, you really want a stock, which comes from bones. So you want to choose pieces of the chicken that have bones. I really prefer chicken thighs. They're inexpensive, they have a lot of meat on them, and they produce a really wonderful stock. You can also use chicken leg quarters. Sometimes you can get them on sale at a really big discount, and you can use those as well, but the legs don't have that much meat on them. So most of the time, if I'm just making this and I don't have chicken leg quarters, I will use thighs. Now you're going to need, I have here about 3 chicken thighs. These are medium-sized chicken thighs. If you find really large ones in your store, then you might only need 2. If you find a package, a really small one, like they're like miniature chickens, then you might need 4. So you're going to have to judge that for yourself. But I'm starting with 3 medium thighs. And you want them skin on. The skin and the bones are going to render a wonderful broth. So you want them skin on. And here again, skin on is cheaper. So go that direction if you possibly can. Now once your water is at a boil, and mine is almost there, then you can start, it's actually just starting to boil. I live at elevation, so it takes a while for mine to boil. But once it starts to boil, you will put in your thighs. Here again, 3 chicken thighs. And you will allow those to boil. Normally it takes about 15 to 20 minutes. Sometimes it can take longer here again if you have bigger thighs. But what I do is when I think they're about ready, I will check them, and I'll show you how to do that to tell when they're ready. Okay, it has been about 14 minutes. And a lot of people are surprised at how quick chicken actually cooks. You don't have to cook it to death. In fact, it's kind of a mistake to cook it too long. It gets really kind of dried out, even if you're cooking it in water, if you overcook it. Now we're going to take all these out, and I'm going to show you how to check to see that they're done. And we're going to turn our broth down to a medium low here. We just want it to bubble. We don't want it to boil anymore. And you can see it's cooked down. Probably it's lost about a cup of liquid, so we're going to end up with about 6 cups. That may sound like a lot, but your dumplings are going to absorb a lot of this liquid. Now when you get your chicken out to see if it is done, what I do is I go all the way down to the bone. I will cut down to the bone on your chicken. And you see how that looks? It may still be a little bit red, but that's okay as long as it's not bloody and the flesh is done. I'm going to let this cool a little bit, and then I'm going to take it completely off the bone. Now all of this you will toss. And you can see this is actually quite a bit of chicken, just from 3 chicken thighs. It actually turns into quite a bit of chicken. But you can shred it with forks, you can cut it up. I do a little of both. Now let's add our meat to our broth. You put all of it in there. And if you're using leftover turkey or rotisserie chicken, this is where you'll start. You'll have 6 cups of liquid and you'll put your meat in here. Now this should be on about medium to low, where it's warm, bubbles a little, but does not boil. To this, we're going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder, a 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder, and I like a 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. If you're not a big fan of black pepper, you can cut that down to a 1/4 teaspoon. But for chicken and dumplings, I like extra pepper, so it's a 1/2 teaspoon. Now to this, we are also going to add some chicken base. And let's talk about that. This is what I use. This is Better Than Bouillon chicken base. Instead of ever having to make stock or to have broth on hand in the cans, I use this. You can keep this in the refrigerator and it lasts a really long time. It tastes so much better than the dry bouillon or bouillon cubes. I think that stuff tastes a little chalky. This is significantly better as far as flavor. And I just checked before I filmed this, and at Walmart this is $4.28. And it may sound expensive, but I bought this in September, about a month ago. And you can see right here, hopefully you can see that, the expiration date is actually 2024. It lasts a very long time in your refrigerator. So to our liquid, we're going to be adding 1.5 teaspoons of the Better Than Bouillon chicken base. Now you want to be really careful with this. It is very flavorful, and so there's a temptation to add more. But honestly, this is one of those things where more is not better. This is also very salty, and it's easy to get things over salted if you use too much. Now I'm going to turn this up to about a medium. And before we add our dumplings, you want to be sure this is bubbling but not boiling. Number one, you can burn your chicken and dumplings, and that's always very sad. But the biggest danger is it will tear apart your dumplings. They will disintegrate if this is boiling. So you want it almost boiling, but not really boiling. For the dumplings, you're going to use 2 cups. This is 2 cups of self-rising flour. You can buy that at the grocery store. You can also make your own, but it's easy to buy at the grocery store, and it makes this very, very fast. It already has your salt, your baking powder, all that stuff is already in it. So you don't need to do any of that. To this, we're going to add 1 cup of heavy whipping cream. And I'm also going to set aside a little 1/4 cup of water over here because we're going to need a little bit of extra moisture, but you want to mix this up first. You want to see where it's at because you're going for a certain texture, and I'm going to show that to you. Now you see, once we get this mixing, you can see it's still a little bit dry. There's still some flour down in here. So I'm going to take my 1/4 cup of water. Oops. And I'm going to add just a little bit to that. Not all of it, just a little bit. Okay, it's going to need just a little bit more, so I'm going to end up using this whole 1/4 cup. But here again, go slow so you don't get your dough too wet. It should come together in a big clump like this and look just like this. Okay, it's not too wet, it's not too dry. Now let's talk about your dumplings. When you make your dumplings, you're going to take a piece of dough about the size of a 1/4, like this. And what I like to do is I like to squish it out flat. I don't leave them in balls. If you do it in balls, then it takes longer for that dumpling to cook through the center, and the outside disintegrates before it gets done. So I flatten them out. Well, they're almost like a contact lens. You kind of flatten them out where they are a uniform thickness. See how thick that is? And they're about this size. And then I drop them in. Now, if you want, you can roll this dough out and cut this into squares with a pizza cutter. That's really quick and easy too. But this is the way I've always done mine. So I guess it's my traditional way of doing it. Now you want to gently push these under your liquid, and as these dumplings cook, part of the flour and the cream that is in these dumplings is going to mix with your liquid, but you want to be really careful. If you stir them too hard or you allow this to boil too hard, your dumplings will disintegrate. Now that's just great right there. Now what I do is you want to loosely cover this while it cooks. If you have a lid for your pot, that's great, but just loosely cover it. Leave some little area where steam can escape. I'm going to loosely cover it with foil, and that works. If you don't have a lid for your pot, no big deal. Just cover it with a little bit of foil loosely, and I'll show you how to do that. We're just going to lay the foil over it and just loosely cover it like this. We're not making a big seal or anything. We're just loosely covering it. Now it's going to take you about 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how big you make your dumplings, for them to cook, and we'll come check it every few minutes. It's really important that you check it and stir it. Be sure it's not burning. Be sure you don't have it boiling too hard. It's got to just simmer. Now you're going to want to come in and stir these. You see how they've puffed up? They're so big and puffy. That's perfect. Actually, these are almost done. But you want to be sure and stir them so the ones on top get done too. Don't stir them too vigorously or your dumplings will all fall apart. And you do want it to be bubbling. Okay, see how it's bubbling? But it's actually, this is bubbling a little bit too hard. So I'm going to turn it down just a little bit and let it continue to bubble. But you want to come in several times every few minutes and stir your dumplings so they get lots. And you see how the liquid has become this beautiful white, rich, thick broth, and it's fabulous. So let's let it cook just a few more minutes to finish cooking our dumplings, and we'll be finished. And there we go. Those are done. If you wonder if they're done, you can cut into your dumplings, and I'll do one for you to show you. And you see how big these dumplings have gotten just from those little bitty quarter-sized discs. That's one of the reasons you don't want to make your dumplings too big at the beginning, because they actually puff up quite a bit. And you can see here, those dumplings are done. They're nice and fluffy on the inside. They're not gummy or pasty. Those are perfect. And here we have some beautiful chicken and dumplings. This actually makes quite a bit. But this is one of those meals that even if you're cooking for one, it's not going to go to waste because it's so good.